On the agenda tonight, we're going to be solving the riddle that was the last video we looked at, John Mellencamp performing Small Town. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So, the last video we looked at was an interesting one because what John was playing on his guitar didn't correlate really to what we were hearing, and I couldn't figure out what the problem was. So there have been a lot of suggestions in the comments section of that particular video, so I'm going to come up with the solution to the problem and why I couldn't figure out what was going on, but also going through some of your suggestions to see if any of them make sense and if anybody hit the nail on the head. So I'm not going to make you guys wait until the end of this video to find the solution. I'm going to state it here that the performance we looked at, John's guitar, we don't hear anything from it. So it's like it has got a lead in it, which we can see, but that lead is going off into nothing. It's just resting on the side of the stage somewhere, not plugged into an amp. But anyway, he would have been turned down on his guitar, or just the amp was turned off. So it's effectively like a dummy guitar. So that's why it doesn't really matter where he's putting his fingers, because we can't hear it. As I stated on that previous video, I didn't know a lot about John. All that I knew was that he'd sold 30 million albums in the USA, 60 million albums worldwide. So it never entered my head that what he was playing, or his guitar, just literally wouldn't be plugged in, and he's just kind of making the strumming action with his hands, and he's not actually playing anything relevant to what we're hearing. When I say that it wasn't relevant, he is doing some chord shapes, and this is why I'm going to spend this video proving the point, because it's one thing to say, oh, we don't hear anything that he's playing, because some people will say, oh yeah, we can, it's just that you can't figure it out because you're not good enough, or something along those lines. But that's another interesting thing that happened in the comments section, because, I mean, John is such a huge selling artist that a couple of people said, oh, it's great to find out that you can't figure out what John's doing on the guitar. And it literally isn't a case of not being able to figure it out. It's the case of what's happening is impossible. And I said that in the video, that it's impossible to figure out what's going on here because what we're seeing and what we're hearing just totally doesn't match up. So what I have done is cross-referenced a lot of live performances of this song, even going back to the 80s, to have a look at how it's performed by the band and by John. And yeah, John, with a lot of his performances of this song, the guitar is kind of like a prop, but saying that insinuates that he can't play the guitar, but he can. He has his own way of doing it, which we will explore. But first of all, I just want to go back to the live performance that we looked at, and I'm going to play the shapes, the chord shapes that John is playing here on his guitar. We'll get into this solo, and I'm just going to follow his hand so you can hear what it would sound like if we could actually hear the guitar. So let's jump into it. So anyway, yeah, that was me playing the chords that John is playing. So if he was plugged in, you can hear that there'll be a total clash with everything else going on in the background. Another thing I noticed in a performance from 2021 is that John, we can hear his guitar, and there's one other guitar playing. He second guesses himself. He's about to go to a D chord, which is the right chord, but he obviously has that mental process of not being sure and just waits to get to the G. I mean, it's blink and you'll miss it kind of stuff because it happens so quickly, but it's the kind of thing that when you are now looking at somebody playing the guitar as I am and studying exactly what happens in this particular performance from one performance to the next, it's something that you notice. And that's it. And this is the thing about professional musicians, is they will cover things very well because there's another guitar playing the correct chords. He can just kind of miss that out, and he is strumming in a reserved manner anyway, so it's not really up front. You can also see that we've got a capo on the 2nd fret, so it proves the point with that previous video that the other guitars had a capo on the 2nd fret, which is what should have happened, and it just proves that John's guitar was a dummy guitar because he didn't have a capo on. And in this performance, I believe a little bit later on, he goes to a D rather than an A minor. Let's have a listen.
In the big town, my bed is in a small town. Oh, it's good enough.
There it is, yeah. So should have gone to the A minor before getting over to that D, but he goes straight into the D when it should have been the A minor. So, I mean, it starts to paint the picture that John, when he's playing this, he's not, I would say, a natural guitarist. It's not something that he's worked at for years and years and years, working on technique and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, doing lead solos. He's very much just, you know, strumming out the chords, and he's learned his own way of doing it. It does bring up an interesting point that when you're talking about music in general, but just huge selling artists who've written great songs, it doesn't matter about your technical ability at any instrument, really. It's all about writing good songs. That's the thing that is like the holy grail. If you can just write loads of hits, then you're laughing, because you don't need to be able to, you know, shred a million notes a second on the guitar. And often, the best guitarists technically in the world don't sell a lot of albums because they can't write the songs. And you can look back at the bands that did really well in the charts and kind of around the world who had guitarists that were at the top level technically. They didn't have songs that lasted for 3 or 4 minutes that were just the guitar. It was a great song and there was a guitar solo in there. And more often than not, the guitar solo was melodic. It wasn't just shredding for like 20 seconds. There was something about it that was catchy, and there'll be certain parts of it that you can sing back and hum. So, I mean, it's a huge part of applying that technique to music. And with musicality as a skill, with melody, being able to pair those things up, I mean, that is the art form. It's important to see it in that light, that when John is playing the guitar, it's about the song. It's not all about, you know, being the best technical guitarist in the world. So, getting into his technique, his G, I did say in that previous video, was unique. And we're going to take a look, actually, at this performance where he does jump from, you know, the G to the C chord, so we can see it in action.
I can be myself here in a small town. People let me be this way.
And in this performance, John is playing the guitar the whole way through. There's no solo section in there, but he is playing it. And when he's going to his G and he comes from the C, he's playing C and then jumping up, and he's playing the 3rd fret with his thumb, and his first finger plays the high E string like that. So he's making that jump up all the time. Now it's obvious that that's just how he does it, and he's never got to the point of, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, if he just plays it like that and it works, then there's no need to make it more efficient, because it's already okay for live performances and for him to play his song, because that's the important thing, that he's doing it the way that he wants to do it for his own song, so you can't really question it. I would say from a technique standpoint, that, I mean, that's a lot of distance to cover between just 2 chord changes and between 2 chords that are really close. When we've got the C, if you look at the movement I'm doing, I'm getting exactly the same sound as this, but, you know, by doing minimum work and just hopping that 3rd finger over and bringing this little finger up to the top. So this is why I said it was unique, because it's kind of making yourself or giving yourself so much more work than is actually required in order to get that chord. But again, it's just something that he does, and that's the way that he does it. And just to finish with, we're going to go back to 1987, and we've got that similar theme, that the guitar is more of a dummy guitar and we can't hear what's being played. I'm going to play what John's playing over the top so we can hear what his guitar would have sounded like.
I was born in a small town, and I live in a small town. Probably die in a small town. Oh, small communities, and all my friends.
And there we have it. And the thing about this is that when he goes from the D, and he's kind of making this C add 9 shape into a G, like that. He then goes over to the A, which he bars, and it should be an A minor, but A, and he goes to the D, and that's when you should go to the G. And obviously I'm saying the shapes here rather than, you know, saying that that's a B chord, because that's what it would be. We've got the capo on the 4th fret. So that's why, yeah, that part really does make it obvious that it doesn't really matter what he's playing. He can even go to the key of the song, the chord before the key of the song, and then change into the key of the song. It doesn't matter because we're not hearing the guitar. So now I want to address some of the comments, and there were quite a lot of people, to be fair, that just said that his guitar isn't on, or you can't hear what he's playing. And that certainly seemed to be the feedback from the guitarists out there that maybe knew John a lot more than I did and knew his music and how much guitar he actually plays, that yeah, it's a regular thing for him not to have his guitar plugged in. But I mean, for some reason it just didn't register with me because of obviously the success and everything. I was maybe placing him as a guitarist and singer, whereas it's probably more the case that he's a singer-songwriter and that the guitar is just something that he can do, but he prefers to kind of sing and, yeah, write great songs, which, like I said, that's what it's all about, and that's what everyone wants to be able to do. The other thing was, somebody said that when he played his D chord, he was playing a G, which would have to kind of be played like that, but looking as if he's playing a D chord. I mean, the difference that you see immediately, and I kind of ruled that out when I was watching the video, because in order to keep all of these fingers hovering, I mean, it's really awkward to get your hand in that position anyway, and then you'd have to have the thumb a lot higher up the fretboard than you would normally, so you kind of have to manufacture that position. And you'd see, even if I try and pretend I'm doing a D and then lighten my fingers, you see the little finger on there. You can't do this, which is, you know, I did a screenshot in that other video of John's hand. You can't do this shape and have the low G playing and the high G playing. You know, that is the shape, so it is impossible, and that's what I said in the video. It's impossible that what we're seeing and what we're hearing are two of the same thing, because there's no correlation there. I think somebody else said about detuning, maybe the guitars are detuned because John sings it in a lower key now than when it was previously released, but we've shown in those two separate performances that the capo is on the 2nd fret, and if you play your G position, which would actually be an A, it's fine, it syncs up, so it means that they are in standard tuning, but they've got the capo on the 2nd fret, so there's no detuning going on. It's just literally the case that I was looking at a guitar that we weren't actually hearing and trying to put those two things together, which obviously was impossible. I think it's probably the case that if he can just focus on his vocal and not have to worry about where his fingers are going on the fretboard, then he'd probably much rather do that than kind of have the added stress of having to get his guitar to sound kind of A1 all the time. So Anyway, thank you guys. I hope you have enjoyed this explanation video. And as always, keep those suggestions and requests coming in the comment section below. Let me know what you guys think. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys at the next one. Rock!